Ward 6B. The key was heavier than I expected. It sat in my palm like something alive, faintly warm despite the cold air outside the old brick hospital. Wax, worn smooth at the edges, the teeth dulled from decades of use. The tag hanging from it was a rectangle of metal, stamped in faded black letters. North Wing, staff entrance. I turned it over a few times, just to feel its weight, as if it might somehow explain itself. I wasn't supposed to have it. A man named Harris gave it to me 2 nights ago, in the back of a cafe where I worked. I'd been wiping down tables when he waved me over, eyes darting towards the rain outside. Found this clearing out my uncle's things, he said, pushing the key across the table. Thought you might want to see the place for yourself. The police. The building had been shut down for 20 years, condemned after a series of budget cuts and structural concerns. My mother used to work here before she got sick. She never told me much about it, only that the night shifts were the worst, and that the North Wing was always colder than the rest of the building. Now, standing in front of it, I felt like the key had somehow pulled me here rather than the other way around. The hospital loomed above me. 6 stories of pale brick embodied windows. Ivy clung to the walls in thick green ropes, and the main doors were chained shut. A faint wind threaded through the place, carrying the smell of damp stone and something faintly chemical. The staff entrance was around the side, half hidden by overgrown bushes. The lock accepted the key with a reluctant turn, metal grinding softly. When the door gave way, the sound echoed in the darkness. Inside, a hollow waiting sound. I stepped in. The air was different immediately, thicker, as though it had been holding its breath for years. My torchlight cut through drifting dust, illuminating peeling paint and a corridor lined with faded signage. Staff lounge, records, Ward 6B. My footsteps sounded too loud, the kind of sounds that make you keep looking over your shoulder. I told myself it was just the acoustics. Something dripped far away. The corridor led deeper into shadow, each step pulling me further from the grey daylight outside. I passed a broken gurney, its rails rusted in place. A stack of chairs leaned against a wall like forgotten centuries. Halfway down the hallway, I saw the first door that was still shut. A narrow window in it with corded grime, but my light picked out a shape on the other side. A tall, narrow outline, motionless. I froze, heart thudding, before realizing it was just an IV stand. Still, I didn't try the handle. I kept moving until the corridor ended in a wide junction. To my right, stairs leading down into blackness. To my left, a double set of swinging doors with a faded north wing sign above them. The air was colder here. Somewhere beyond those doors, I thought I heard the faintest shuffle of movement. Not the decisive step of a person, but something softer, like cloth dragging over a tile. I told myself it was just my imagination, but the silence after was worse. It was the kind of silence that feels like it's listening to you. The swinging doors groaned as I pushed them open. The hinges resisted, then gave way with a sigh that seemed to carry down the corridor beyond. Inside the north wing, the smell changed. Less dust, more stale air, as though the place had been sealed tighter than the rest of the hospital. My flashlight swept over cracked white tiles and faded green walls, and something about the layout felt different. Narrower hallways, fewer windows. I moved forward, keeping to the middle of the floor, where my boots wouldn't brush against the shadows that seemed to cling to the edges. Halfway down, I passed a door with a plaque that read, Ward 6B, authorized staff only. The lock was still engaged, but the metal had gone the color of old blood, and the paint on the frame curled like burnt paper. I tried the handle out of instinct. It didn't budge. As I sat there, hands still on the cold metal, I heard it again. That faint dragging sound somewhere beyond the door, like something being slowly pulled across the floor. I stepped back, pulse quickening. The sound stopped immediately, as if whatever had been making it knew that I was listening. The corridor ahead forked into 2 narrow passageways. I chose the one on the left, more out of unease about the locked ward and curiosity about what lay ahead. The passage ended at a heavy door with a tiny reinforced window. I peered through, expecting only darkness, but the beam of my flashlight caught the corner of something metallic. A desk, perhaps. Papers lay scattered on the floor, yellow with age. The door wasn't locked. Inside was a small office, walls lined with filing cabinets. A calendar on the wall was still open to March 2001. Each square neatly filled in with illegible notes. On the desk sat a dusty typewriter, a half-finished sheet still rolled in. My light called the words, "Patient exhibits sign-off." The rest was smudged as though someone had run a damp hand over the ink before it dried. I tried a few of the filing cabinet drawers. Most were locked, but one slid open easily, revealing a folder labeled Fleming Clara. The name tugged at something in my memory, but I couldn't place it. Inside were photocopied medical forms, progress reports, and what looked like handwritten notes from various staff members. Most described erratic behavior, trouble sleeping, and a recurring delusion involving the man in the doorway. The last entry was dated March 14th, 2001, just 2 days before the hospital officially shut down. No discharge summary, no explanation, just silence. I set the file down, meaning to check another drawer, but froze. Somewhere out in the corridor, a door clicked shut. I waited, holding my breath until the quiet settled back in. No footsteps followed the click. No second sound. But I knew, with the same certainty you know a storm is coming, that I wasn't alone in here. I stepped back into the hallway, flashlight sweeping left and right. The doors all looked the same now. The peeling paint blending into a uniform, sickly green. The air seemed thicker, heavier, and I realized I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. A sign ahead pointed the way. Records. The door to the records room was half open, as though someone had been inside not long ago. I pushed it gently, hinges creaking like an old throat clearing. Inside it was colder. Rows of tall metal filing cabinets stretched towards the far wall. The ceiling tiles sagged with damp, and the smell of paper and mildew was strong enough to taste. On a central desk lay a scattering of patient files, their manila covers warped and curling at the corners. I set my flashlight down so it cast a wide cone of light over the desk, then began flipping through the files. O'Malley Bryan, Whitefield Henry, Travers Joan. The names meant nothing at first, but as I read, I started noticing something. Many of the reports mentioned recurring dreams. Dreams about hallways, locked doors, and the feeling of being watched. One file stopped me cold. Fleming Clara, the same woman from the folder in the office area. This file was more detailed. Therapy transcripts, incident logs, staff memos. The handwriting varied, but the tone was the same. An increasing unease around her presence, as if she carried something with her that the others could feel. One memo, unsigned, read, "Patient insists she is not here of her own will. Blames she was sent back to a place she always ends up. Advises staff not to engage with her questions about time or identity." I set the folder aside, uneasy. Another file caught my eye, not because of the name, but because of the date. The label was faded, but I could still make it out. March 2001. The name below it was my own. I didn't move for a moment, just stared at it, willing the letters to rearrange themselves into something else, but they didn't. I opened it. The first page was a standard intake form, the type I'd just seen dozens of other files, only the details were wrong. The handwriting in the next of kin box looked almost like mine, but shakier. The address listed wasn't my current one, but the house I grew up in. The date of birth matched. There were no progress notes, no discharge papers, just one final sheet, typed in neat block letters. Return to Ward 6B. I didn't hear the sound immediately. It was more like I felt it, a slow, deliberate scrape of something moving outside the door. The scrape came again. Deliberate, Patient, not hurried, not hunting, just there. I killed the flashlight. The darkness was instant and absolute, a weight pressing in on all sides. I counted silently to 5, listening. The scrape stopped, but something else took its place, a faint rhythmic clicking, like fingernails lightly tapping glass. When I flicked the flashlight back on, the hallway outside was empty. I stepped into it anyway. My boots made almost no sound now. The dust and damp carpeted the floor in a muffling layer. At the far end, the corridor stretched into what my brain wanted to call normal darkness, but I'd been in here long enough to know the difference. This wasn't just a lack of light. It was the way the air seemed thicker there, as if the shadows had a mass. And at the end of the hallway, barely visible, was the sign, Ward 6B. The locked door I'd passed earlier stood slightly ajar. I felt my throat go dry. Every rational thought said leave, but my legs didn't listen. Each step felt like it was chosen for me. The air grew colder, heavy, enough that I almost had to breathe. Halfway down, the lights above me flickered. Once, twice, then they steadied. Dimmer than before, but enough to see that the corridor ahead had changed. The walls were closer now. The green paint replaced by bare concrete. The doors I passed were wrong. Handles missing, hinges rusted to black. One door stood open just enough for me to glimpse the inside. A chair, facing the wall, straps hanging from its arms like limp fingers. I didn't look twice. The clicking sound returned, closer this time. It seemed to come from all around me, like the building itself was making it. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I kept moving until I reached the door to Ward 6B. It was open. The smell hit fast. Not rot, not blood, but something faintly sweet, like old flowers left too long in stagnant water. The room beyond was dark, except for a weak strip of light spinning from a window at the far end. I stepped inside. It wasn't a ward, not exactly. More like a long common room, empty except for scattered furniture, and a single gurney in the middle. On it lay another file. My name was on the cover again. Inside was only one page, handwritten in careful, deliberate strokes. If you're reading this, you've been here before. The clicking stopped. From behind me came the sound of slow, bare footsteps on the tile. I turned, flashlight trembling in my hand. The room was empty. The gurney, the chairs, the pale strip of light from the window. All exactly as before. No one there. But the footsteps, I'd heard them. I felt them. I backed towards the wall, keeping my eye on the doorway. That was when I saw the second door. It was at the far end, half hidden behind a rusting metal cabinet. A single stenciled number on it, 6B-12. The handle was warm. The door opened into a small, windowless room. The air was warmer here, heavy with the smell of paper and something faintly metallic. A single bed was pushed against the wall, the thin mattress sagging in the middle. Above it, a bare light bulb buzzed, casting shadows that twitched at the edge like they were breathing. On the bed sat another file. I didn't want to touch it, but my hands moved anyway, like muscle memory was guiding them. The cover bore my name again, not typed, but written in my own handwriting. Inside were only a few lines, admitted March 12, 2001. Condition, persistent looped delusion. Subject believes they are visiting hospital for the first time. Recommendation, observation, no discharge. The paper blurred as my vision swam. I dropped the file, but it landed open on the floor, the last page visible. A photograph, me, sitting on the bed in this very ruin, staring at the camera, with a blank expression. The date printed at the bottom, March 14th, 2001. Something shifted behind me. I turned to see a figure standing in the doorway, tall, thin. The face was blurred, like it had been smudged out of reality, but the posture was oddly familiar. It spoke in my voice. You've done this before. The bulb above me flickered once, twice, and then went out. Darkness. I could still hear my own breathing, shallow, fast, and the faint hum of the building's hidden machinery, as though some part of it still lived even after a decade of abandonment. When the light came back, it wasn't from the bulb. It came from the hallway beyond the figure, a pale, flickering glow like moonlight reflected in water. The figure was gone. I stepped into the hall. The glow retreated as I moved forward, drawing me deeper. The walls were no longer concrete or tile, but smooth and pale, almost bone-like. My footsteps echoed strangely, as if the space was both too large and too small at the same time. Every few paces I passed doors, each one marked with a name I recognized. People I'd met in my life, neighbors, old classmates, my mother. Every door was closed. The glow finally stopped ahead at another door. This one marked simply discharge. The handle was cold, biting into my palm. Inside was an office, clean, lit by daylight spilling in through wide windows. A desk sat in the center, and behind it a man in a pale coat. Its face was perfectly clear, but somehow I couldn't recall it even as I looked right at him. "You're back," he said, like greeting someone late for an appointment. I tried to speak, but my voice caught. He opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Mine. This one looked new, crisp. My name in fresh ink. He slid it across the desk to me. Inside the single sheet read, "Patient believes that they have entered the abandoned hospital in present day. Reality, patient is resident. Condition unchanged. Discharge not recommended." I looked up at him. "I don't live here." His expression didn't change. "You said that before." I stood, meaning to leave, but when I turned towards the door, it wasn't there. Only a bare wall where I'd just entered. The room felt smaller now, the light dimming as if the sun were being pulled away. The man's voice came from behind me, calm and certain. "You'll walk the halls again. You'll find the files. You'll think it's the first time." The air thickened until every breath scraped in my throat. The floor shifted under me, tilting, and suddenly I was falling. I landed hard on dusty tile. The staff entrance door was open behind me, sunlight spilling through. My flashlight was in my hand. Ahead, a faded sign pointed toward the north wing. In my palm, the key felt heavier than I remembered. Somewhere far down the corridor, I heard the faint, patient sound of something being dragged across the floor, and I walked towards it.